Hey guys, how are you all doing? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Lucy x Ultear, part 1. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. Time goes on, really. That sucks, but I can think of worse things. As soon as the clarity of thought came to him he was up. It proved to be a mistake when he felt the torment of pain. It originated from his right arm, or lack thereof. Since it was only a short while ago when it was severed. Naruto Uzumaki drearily gazed at his arm, dark, crimson droplets fell from the remainder of his arm. A tiny puddle of blood pooled to where he was standing. He looked around, seeing some dust wildly waving in the air. By that, it meant that he must have just arrived. He could feel his pulse quicken from the potential of danger. It wasn't a good thing, as he quickly soon felt lightheaded. He already lost a lot of blood earlier today. "Kurama," Naruto said. Looking around carefully for any sign of movement. He tried his best to slow his heartbeat with deep careful breaths. His free hand moved to his arm to staunch the light bleeding. "Kurama." There wasn't a response. He could still feel the fox's presence, however dim that may be. He hadn't awoken since the fight. With that frame in mind he quickly thought of an alternative other than Sage Maid, which would be impossible to do at the moment. There were no negative emotions that belonged to Zetsu nearby. Either he was thankfully dead, gone, or his senses were shit. The last of the three was not going to help him calm his heart. He could sense the far-out cluster of unique negative emotions. Far unlike the clone mass that the Zetsus possessed. It was more akin to the shinobi and general populace. Naruto figured that's where he should be headed. His survival hinged on that fact. Probably. Naruto took a step and he immediately stumbled, landing on his knees and breathing heavily. The closest that could be described as rest was him laying on a rock with a bleeding maimed arm. So none really. A nice big comfy bed with a large warm blanket covering him. A large bowl of Ichiraku ramen with his favorite flavor and spices sitting on his lap. Maybe having a bowl with his friends wasn't the right time to think of such things. He was right on death's door, falling asleep, and he would trip through the frame. Staring at such a welcoming sight would only entice him. He attempted to stand and felt his legs scream out in protest. He breathed in and his lungs filled with dust and dirt before he coughed it out. His face was buried into the ground, he hadn't even noticed he had fallen. Naruto forced himself into position in a more comfortable way, his gaze settled on the white clouds overhanging him. He was more tired than he thought, his mind was definitely willing, but his body couldn't commit. It was also a rather shaky ride, one that he didn't know whether he was entirely conscious throughout. Too much thinking and not enough doing. He still had things to accomplish. "Okay Kurama, sorry, but I'm gonna have to take a bit more. What would be the repercussions?" The more important question seemed to be if he didn't, then he would likely die. Naruto could feel the slight warmth of power flowing through him, weak, but it was enough. It wasn't the golden glowing hue, nor the reddish bubbling chakra. It was very little, but it was enough. It didn't completely engulf him, and the warmth was missing in some areas. He stood up with some difficulty, before placing his hand back on his bleeding arm. He'd had to go slow, else he would bleed more. Dying was bad. Slow, careful steps. Shaky lifting and landing. The shrubbery and trees passed by him. He met some trouble when he passed through some rocky area with boulders. Some places passed by in a blur, while others went to a slow agonizing crawl. The gaunt of his walk was definitely mindless, a machine. Although he made sure that he was heading the right way. Naruto did not focus on the distance between the town and him. No. It was only putting one foot in front of the other. It did not become repetitive. It was likely the most goals he had ever completed in succession. To keep moving, to keep each foot moving forward. Because it seemed a monumental task if he tried to see how far off he was. He fell down a few times and he tried his best to break them. If he did fall, it was a definite task to stand back up again, and each time he had to call upon more chakra from Kurama. Sometimes it seemed easier, but harder the next. He went through water, and even tougher water if that made sense. It wasn't until he heard the familiar drown of a town or city that he realized that he made the trek. There were no more worn-out animal trails or bushes he would have walked through. His feet planting the pavement of the town gave some obvious clues. It was dark out, the lights illuminating the streets. Someone. Anyone. There, that was his next mission. Find someone. Thankfully it was an easy task. Naruto talked to the first person he came across. The quickest and fastest way to carry his concerns. Help. Hospital. Sleep. Rest. He was so tired. The man he was talking to looked at him with wide panicked eyes as he was gauged. His mouth moved and alien words scrambled out from his lips. Naruto fell to his knees and perhaps tried to mumble out some curses. Naruto was still somewhat coherent, if not single-minded. The man yelled out, likely alerting others his state of his health. Naruto stayed awake right until a duo who looked like medical professionals. They carried him off on a stretcher before he finally dozed off. Naruto woke up and took in his surroundings. At least hospitals still look the same no matter where he was. Drab and white with medical equipment. He was situated on one of those gurneys, tubes sticking out of him. There was an ache and he felt a little disoriented, drugs probably. His arm must have gotten infected when it reopened, and while the time he was walking was blurry, he actually might have fallen in a swamp, but he wasn't so sure. Naruto closed his eyes, feeling that his chakra was relatively low, but stable. He tried to call Kurama, but received no answer. It might have been a day, it might have a couple, but it didn't matter. It was time to go and figure out where he was and get back if he wasn't already. He was dressed in a hospital gown, with tubes connected to him and the machines beside the bed. The clothing he had worn was likely in that bag hanging against the wall. He stood up, testing how he was faring, and found that he was good to move. A little tired, but able to walk. As soon as he ripped off the cords that clung to him and some big needles, the machine started beeping erratically. He quickly reached for the bag where his clothes were kept and found that the window could be opened. Naruto slipped out from the window and he immediately felt the cool wind breeze through him. Since he was only wearing a gown and nothing underneath, it was an unfamiliar but pleasant sensation. He walked to the top of the roof and sat down at the edge. The sun cast an orange glow. Reddened skies of the setting sun, or possibly a rising one. He would find out soon enough. It was a large town, one that he didn't recognize. Any signs he saw were written in a different language and in unfamiliar characters. Drunken strangers stumbled down below, hollering at several passers-by, but generally being harmless. It didn't help with the current passage of time. So the people here did speak another language, or they were too completely drunk to be understood by the sober. Another thing that was cause for concern was that there was no panic or relief. He saw none of the massive roots of the god tree. No confusion, no hurried atmosphere that a settlement should carry after a full-blown war had ended. Even if this place was outside of the elemental nations, there should be some concern of he didn't know, the massive explosions. The earth-shattering techniques. The brief red moon in the sky. Naruto looked in the bag, sandals, layered fishnet shirt and pants. Other than his sandals, the articles of clothing were ripped and bloodied, muddied and trashed. There really was nothing else of note in the bag. Overall, he did not have any possessions. His headband was at the valley of the end, as they had more pressing concerns of releasing the others. He intended on fetching it later. He stood and felt the ache on his wound. Standing up here wouldn't give him any answers. It was time to move. It was time to get back. Though, he could really go for some hot ramen right now. Years later, Lucy Hertfilia had blonde hair that was tied up in a sideways ponytail and wore a tight sleeveless white zip-up vest with blue linings. She had a short pleated blue skirt with a set of gold and silver keys. When she was 16, she had decided that would strive out on herself and get out of her uncaring father's hands. Now she was 17 and an entire year of supporting herself. But that in mind, what jewels she had left was running low, so her plan consisted of joining a mage guild since she was magically gifted. As much as she hated to admit it, her jewels weren't going to last forever. She overlooked the buildings and signs of this town. She was slightly jittery around Harjan town, even though their problem was likely all over with. It wasn't far too long ago when that slavery ring had been found and ended by the authorities. She tried not to let it bother her, but that didn't stop her from trying to find the only magical shop around. With a simple ask of directions, she found the place not too far from the help. If luck was on her side, she hoped she would stumble across a key. She entered the little magical shop and looked quickly around. The interior was modest and neatly arranged. Trinkets and other magical artifacts were placed around the shop with small price tags attached to them. At least it wasn't some decadent, shady store. Other than the obvious shop owner, someone else was inside. Blonde hair with bangs that reached to his eyes and a tall-eyed frame. He wore an orange scarf around his neck with a worn hoodless black poncho. He finished it off with black pants and sandals. In her opinion, he looked like a hobo off the street with how worn out the poncho looked. Lucy was proved wrong when he handed over a decent sum of jewels to a surprised owner who likely followed the same frame of mind. As she walked closer, the owner brought out a key, but not just any key. A freaking celestial spirit key. A silver one, but still. Her eyes widened and she resisted shouting out her exclamations as the stranger placed it in his single sling bag. "Nice doing business with you." "Sure, thanks," the blonde man replied. Taking it from the owner and putting it in his pocket, he walked past her with a nod and exited the shop. Was he a fellow celestial spirit mage? Those like her were relatively rare. "Welcome, sorry I was with him," Lucy claimed as she followed him out, the door slamming close behind her. Lucy quickly found which direction he went. He was pretty easy to spot in the small crowd. There was also the matter of his blonde hair and his tallness. "Wait, mister." Several other men heard her shouts and turned towards her, but her target did not until she tapped him on the shoulder to grab his attention. The stranger turned to her, his brows raised in curiosity. She had a good look at his face this time, 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek, along with cerulean eyes. With a much larger glance at his features, he was unique looking, and despite his clothing he looked well kept. She expected a more homeless look. Then again he did buy that key. The stranger scratched his chin and revealed decent-looking clothing under his worn poncho, so why did he wear it? Mr. Geez, do I look that old? He frowned. In fact, he didn't look much older than she did. The blonde turned and started to walk forward once again. She took it as an invitation to join him. Lucy flipped her hair back in a flourish. Surely a young man like him couldn't resist the charms of a young beautiful maiden like her, could he? Perhaps he could be persuaded to relinquish his key. She lowered the zipper of her shirt and slightly bent forward for a little luscious show of her cleavage. Lucy sauntered along with him as they walked together. At least he looked cute enough, she wouldn't mind. Far too often she had attempted to gain discounts from rather unattractive men, so this was a pleasant change of pace. Unfortunately, she realized that he was more focused on walking than paying attention to her. Do you know what that key was? Well, I mean it's a key. He replied plainly, uninterested. Telling her that he really had no idea. She circled her arms under her chest, making her very generous breasts appear larger than they already were. If you had no idea what it is, then why did you buy it? He looked at her then, but his gaze didn't even look or peek below, not even when she looked forward to giving him a chance. She pouted cutely, as she could manage, disappointed. It looked nice. He replied. What do you mean it looked nice? How much did it cost? 26,000 jewels. Just like that? She asked. Did he have spare jewels to spend, or did he just have horrid spending habits? Oh. Maybe she shouldn't be the one to talk. She had bought plenty of cute expensive clothing since she left her father's home. He smiled. It was actually a bit charming. It was amplified when he unbuttoned his poncho to reveal an expensive-looking dark gray jacket. He placed it on his shoulder. It was a little hot out. Sure it did. I was going to use it as a key for this place I own. What? No way, you can't do that. She yelled at his face. Why not? He retorted as he continued walking at a faster, more uncomfortable pace. The whiskered teen noticed that she was still following, giving a small frown before he blurted out a question. Oh yeah, who the hell are you? Damn it, how could she forget such a thing? It made her seem like she was only interested in acquiring that key she had, which she was admittedly. Lucy stopped suddenly and was pleased to know that he was drawn enough to do the same. Her girlish charms were at least showing. I'm Lucy Hertfilia, she said. Holding her hand out for a shake and bending slightly forward to show off her cleavage. He raised a brow and looked down, except it wasn't to blatantly look at her breasts. His gaze was curiously at her hand, but he did not offer his own. He continued to look for a few more moments, and she was about to call out on him for being a jerk before she looked to his right arm. Only a free sleeve was visible in comparison to the opposite side, which he took a hold of and placed it in a pocket. Which meant the entirety of his right arm was gone. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. She flushed and squealed in embarrassment. The stranger, whoever he was, looked at her in surprise. Then he had decided not to be humble, as he laughed heartily at her mortification. Oh man, your face. He laughed. That pig snort. Lucy did not snort. She looked at the ground red-faced and stamped her feet in childish manner from how embarrassed she was, but only served to make him laugh more. This was not how it was supposed to go. She was so immensely ashamed she wanted to crawl into a hole and never see him again. He finally stopped somewhat, seeing the tears from his eyes. Oh, glad he found it so funny, it wasn't so. He gave a loud sigh, and he seemed to relax a lot more rather than the standoffish vibe. It's alright, hi Lucy. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said, as he smiled brightly and tried to stifle his chuckles. He held out his left arm and she returned it with a timid handshake. As he did, she noticed an orange mark on his hand, signifying that he was a part of a guild. It was relatively simple, a leaf. She couldn't help but gasp. So you're a mage. Which guild are you from? Lay me a scale. Blue Pegasus, please tell me you're from Fairy Tail. She said excitedly, her embarrassment all but forgotten. He looked perturbed from her questions. You can say that, but I have no idea what those guilds are, but yeah, I'm from one, he replied as he walked ahead. She eagerly followed him. What do you mean you never heard of Fairy Tail? Or of the other guilds? She asked. Attempting to converse in small talk before asking about the prize. No, never really cared much about it. I'm sort of new to Fiori, Naruto uttered as he kept moving. How was she able to charm him if he didn't stare at her? Gosh, she was practically trying to give him a free show. You mean you're from another kingdom? She asked and was given a nod. Not from around here. Well, there were longer pauses in speech and, oh, there was a slight accent that he possessed. Cute. But, you're a part of the guild, how can you not know? She dug into her little purse, intent on fetching a particular magazine. I don't know, it's just that I never really cared about remembering their names, he said. She finally found what she was looking for in her own purse, a magazine of Sorcerer's Weekly. Look, this is Fairy Tail, and you're telling me you've never heard of them? She leaned towards him, pressing herself against him. She felt kind of embarrassed by her attempts, but he stopped walking as he looked at the magazine. She pointed at the front cover of the swimsuit issue, one that featured that all beautiful Marahin Strauss. Her white hair with the orange bikini set as she gave a pose that showed off her beauty. Naruto took a small peek at it before giving her a wary look. This isn't one of those perverted magazines, is it? What, no? Oh, I almost thought of you as that kind of girl for a second. I knew someone who would have had a field day with that, but then again he probably would have met them. She controlled her blush as she continued talking, ignoring his jab and mumbling. This is Marahin, the beauty of Fairy Tail. She's really powerful, as she's an S-class mage. She's not in here, but there's also another woman who's an S-class mage, the Titania. Have you ever heard about the salamander? He looked away for a moment but assumed he was still listening as she continued talking about how awesome Fairy Tail was. Naruto brought his hand up to his chin. Now that you've brought it up, I've heard of the salamander before. Wait, let me finish, because the guy was just an imposter, but this salamander guy was a part of Fairy Tail, huh? Pretty cool, I guess. Just cool. They're awesome. Do you know them? No, but I want to. I was going to go to Magnolia Town and ask if I could join. Because I want to join a guild. Hey, where's your guild? Maybe I could join if the off chance that Fairy Tail doesn't let me. Lucy swallowed hard. She was so close to Magnolia Town, yet the closer she got, the more self-conscious she became. I'm sure you'll get in, but as for my guild, it's called Fire Shadow and doesn't have a lot of members, but it's in Onibus Town, where I'm heading right now. Fire Shadow? I don't think I've heard of that one yet, is it new? She asked curiously. She peeked at his symbol once more. It was a leaf. What did that have to do with it? Yeah, official and everything, just got done with a mission, so I came to stop by the shop to see if anything interesting was in it. Lucy hoped she would be accepted into Fairy Tail, nothing against Naruto's guild, but it didn't hold a candle to Fairy Tail. Ha. If she didn't want to insult him, she would have said, you said you were going to, right? How about we catch the train together then? He looked at her then. Okay, what do you want? You said something about the key, right? Kinda forgot about that. What? Nothing. It's just that if the key is what I think it is, it might be dangerous, she reasoned. He went thoughtful for a moment. Hey, I'll be fine. Naruto shrugged. She simply blinked at her fellow blonde. Her attempts to obtain the key had been lackluster at best. Damn, he was just so easy to speak to that she had fallen into a sense of comfort. Moreover, his disability made her feel bad. What kind of mage are you? He spaced out once more. A wind mage, I suppose. He nodded to himself as they passed more people on their way towards the train station. Lucy thought to herself that he was a fairly strange one, at least for an initial impression. The guy hadn't even stared at her boobs yet. Maybe he played for the other team. That would be the only reason that she would accept. That wouldn't hurt her pride as a woman. Lucy knew that she was very well developed for a 17-year-old, a large bust, a thin waist, and some killer legs that she was showing. So if he was a similar age guy, then no doubt he appreciated her looks. Okay, but as a celestial mage, I'll know if it would be dangerous or not. I'll be fine, he replied simply once more. It was not something she expected. Was her charm not enough? I mean, she was inexperienced and she never had a boyfriend, but she was beautiful, damn it. Oh, okay, if you're alright, except she didn't know what she would have done if he had handed it over to her. She wasn't a thief. Maybe she didn't think all of this through. Perhaps it would be best if she could buy it off him. Do you still want to catch the train together? Well, I have no reason to say no, so yeah, I guess so. They had shared some small talk throughout, but at the moment they were silent as the steel car line shook under them. Lucy thought about how she was going to obtain the celestial key from him. It seemed money was the only way. Except it was a bit expensive, 26,000 jewels. That would definitely leave a dent with what left she had on her. With no chatter between them, Lucy took out the magazine from earlier. She didn't quite get the chance to look at it. Spotted on the cover, blazed in bold large letters, was Fairy Destroys a Casino. There were other things too, like Marahin's clothing choices or the regretful thief. What should she look at first? The shenanigans that Fairy Tail got into, Marahin's preferences in attire, or see the possibly silly note that the weird mage did this time. There was a small clang of metal near her which made her flinch. She looked beside her. Naruto looked slightly pale, staring straight ahead like he was trying to murder something with his gaze alone. His free and only hand grasped a bar for stability for patrons. It was bent from his strength, and with his intense staring, it seemed he wasn't comfortable with the idea of the method of travel. She couldn't help but giggle. You don't like traveling on a train? He didn't look at her, a bead of sweat trailing down the side of his face. Being on here twice, it makes me uncomfortable. He frowned, she felt a little bad for him, and perhaps it was the entirety of his right arm that he was missing that made her take a little pity on him. She was curious to know what happened to it, some little glances here and there showed that it was separated to his shoulder. However, it seemed a little intrusive of her if she was going to ask that. "How long have you lived here?" Lucy asked. When she thought about it, while he was in a vulnerable state, maybe he would be more susceptible to her charms and hand over the key. "A month," Naruto replied. "That's not too long, and only twice. I guess that you are rather new to transit then." "No, I just got around by running or walking. That's how I've always done it. I thought it would get better after the first, it seemed more of a much more unnecessary way of travel when a faster way was available. Anyway, it was his preference at how he wanted to travel. Again, I just feel slightly uncomfortable being on here. Hey. What if you really focus on my eyes, maybe it will help." She suggested, really, it was more of a way to get him to look at her. Can't exactly use her looks to her advantage if his attention was focused elsewhere. Why would that work? She didn't, but he didn't have to know that. "Have you ever tried it?" Point taken, he got into a more comfortable position and his blue eyes were on hers once more. "So, are you trying to get into a legal guild?" She felt her nervousness crept up on her, what if they didn't accept her? She would have to find another guild to join, but at the same time no other guild could measure up. Then again, with how famous Fairy Tail was, it was probably swamped with requests to join and probably had high standards for those who desired to. She nodded in affirmation, "Yeah, I want to be a part of a legal guild, it's been a dream of mine." "A dream, huh?" Naruto's eyes seemed different. Piercing even. Then it disappeared as he nodded and smiled. "I'm sure you're pretty close to it, but otherwise, what the hell do you want with this key?" She blushed a little, so he had seen right through her from the start. Guess she really wasn't trying that hard. He went a little paler when the train bounded a little higher than usual. It was a few more moments when he actually spoke. He didn't seem to be angry. "I mean, it's pretty obvious you want it, it must mean something to you. I really want to know what the hell this is." She laughed nervously. "Well, I was about to ask if I could buy it off you, as it might be a bit useless to you." "Ah, so you know what it is then?" The shop owner wasn't much too useful, as he just said it was a spiritual key or something. "That saves me a bit of time and money, I guess." Naruto smiled, who still intently stared into her eyes. He actually seemed thankful. "Well, I knew it was some special key. It's why I bought it, you see, I collect magical artifacts." He really didn't seem the type to collect things like that. "Why?" "Just for fun," Naruto said, his blue orb still locked on hers. "You know, it's actually working. I feel a bit better." "Oh, so are my womanly features working? What's that got to do with it?" She stared dumbly at him, she was looking for a compliment and either he missed the obvious bait or, "So, the key has something to do with spirits. It's the only reason why you followed me out of that magic shop, right?" He dug into his pocket and fished out the key that she had sought after, he held it out in front of her. Well, hopefully she could buy it off him, as it seemed the only way to do so now. "It's a celestial spirit key, I'm a celestial mage, so it allows me to form a contract with whatever spirit it holds. If it allows me to form one, of course," she explained. There was a twinkle in his eyes, an acknowledgement of understanding came from him. "Can I see one?" "What's today?" "Saturday, okay," she said to herself as she dug into her purse to fetch a silver key. "I am linked to the path to the world of celestial spirits, now. Oh spirit, answer my call," and passed through the gate. The light appeared in front of them. A man not sitting far from them stood up and walked to the other end where others peered curiously. A short penguin-looking creature appeared on the cart they were in, its face looked like a clock while a beak protruded from it. On top of its head was a compass. She felt a sense of pride well within and she looked at Naruto for a reaction. "A weird-looking little thing, isn't he?" He blurted out. "Yeah, so what? Don't talk to my friend like that." Lucy yelled at him, Naruto looked taken back. A moment later Pixis disappeared by her command. Naruto had decent enough manners to look sheepish, a hand rubbing his neck. "Sorry, I was just speaking my mind, I used to be a whole lot worse when I was younger if you believe me." "Oh, I believe you alright," she replied, controlling her anger as she crossed her arms. "So this key holds a summon like that," as he took out a silver key, as if to tempt her, suddenly, he held it out to her. "Have it." She blinked dumbly, her jaw going slack. "What? Why?" His lips formed into a half smirk. "You're obviously protective of your summons, friends with them maybe. I have no use for it and really you're the one doing me a favor here as you would have saved me a bit more jewels than to have it inspected and you saved some time too." Naruto tilted his head and she was in shock. Thoughts about how this was one big joke kept going through her head. She felt his hand lightly grasp hers with a pinky and placed the silver key in her hand. "Apparently not. You're just giving me this?" "Sure, in return." She felt her imagination suddenly take hold, it seriously just got out of control for a moment. Like how he wanted a peek at her goods or something along those lines. Just tell me a bit more in detail about how the celestial summoning works, alright? Maybe the summon that's in the key, and I mean everything about celestial spirits. Is that okay? Damn her rampant imagination. Whatever, a free celestial key. That was a win in her book. Wow, now that she thought about it, she never thought that such a thing would work. Guess her womanly features and charms had worked after all. Of course they would. And someone who was very curious about her magic and wanted it explained very thoroughly. It turned out to be a good day. The blue eye opened up itself, letting the faded light invade the darkness he was a part of. It was something that had to happen. Naruto liked the feeling before he awoke, lost between some sort of twilight or sleep and the alertness of being fully awake. Sometimes he would relish over the pleasant dreams of the previous sleep. He stayed there until his drowsiness disappeared. One of them had to be awake anyway. He stood up from his bed and began doing the usual morning ritual, a few morning workouts, stretching, cooking, eating, and finishing off with a shower. Naruto was back at his place. He apparently had to have a place for the guild Fireshadow to be legitimate, an official place where individuals can locate and find. Guess that went over okay. He needed an actual place where he could place his research and findings. He liked to say research because it made him seem smarter. His apartment was rather tidy, surprisingly, but only because he didn't stay here often, as most of his living was out in Fiori, sometimes in hotels or most often outside. Most of the food he had was non-perishable. He gave a huge thanks to Raymond for still existing in this place. It would be a day of relaxation. Just like nearly every other day. In this case, just staying in his apartment and doing absolutely nothing but just waiting. He sat on his desk as he picked up his tool. Writing was very interesting to him, other than tending to plants. The former couldn't survive with how long he was gone frequently. The latter, however, could be easily carried with him. Writing was one thing that he had recently picked up, mostly to help pass the time. Cheap and portable. He wrote down his master's favorite novel. Well, at least it started out that way, because some differences were established. So perhaps a better word would be a rendition or based on the story. His attempts at first were shaky at best, mostly in part because he was unfamiliar with writing with his left arm. It had taken a while, because even with his dominant hand, his writing was hardly legible to himself for a little while. The blonde heard something that had always been a rare occurrence. A knock at the door. He listened once more to make sure he wasn't going crazy. Another set of knocks that echoed throughout his apartment. Oh good, he wasn't insane. Not yet at least. Hiding away his leftover research, he stood up and walked through his apartment to answer. But the door that swung open, he was greeted with such a familiar sight. Lulu? No wait, Lucy. Lucy had been in such a great mood when she waved a little farewell to Naruto as he stepped on the train and a free celestial key to boot. He was actually really nice and fairly cute. Naruto had shown a lot of genuine interest in her magic, listening with rapt attention and asking plenty of questions. He had referred to earlier information or requested her to go into more detail in a more specific area. It had gone on longer than the train ride and they went into a restaurant to grab some food and they continued talking. She looked at the city of Magnolia Town and took a deep breath into a new start of her life. It was when she was a few steps into it when she realized she forgot her luggage back at her hotel at Hargent Town. Oh well, she could have it delivered afterwards when she settled in, some service might offer that. Lucy had been looking forward to standing in front of the entrance to Fairy Tale. Yet, as she walked closer to her destination, she felt that excitement turn to apprehension until ultimately climaxing into fear. It had been nearing the end of that day when she decided that it was getting late and reasoned that her favorite guild would not be accepting any submissions late in the hour. So she slept in a very expensive hotel, building up her nerves once more and relaxing at the luxurious inn. Unfortunately, all that time was spent relaxing and the day had passed once more into the evening. She had steeled herself then. The difference between that day and yesterday was that she had actually seen the door to Fairy Tale before she bolted back for another day. Needless to say, that massive door that led inside the guild hall where all the Fairy Tale mages hung out and where the Titania was and where the Salamander was and Marahan Strauss stayed too and all the other countless people who were a part of Fairy Tale where she was thinking of going there to make herself one. So what would happen if she wasn't to be accepted in the Great Fairy Tale Guild? How would she Jules then? How would she be able to buy cute clothes? And Lucy in her panicking thoughts yelped in pain as she fell over on the road that caused the people nearby to giggle and chuckle at her. A quick thought of blaming the nearest person had crossed her mind, which would have been the small child staring at her. Lucy, as gracefully as she could despite kissing the dirt, stood up and wiped the dust off her. Her face was heating up in embarrassment from tripping on nothing. She restarted walking towards the guild hall once more. However, this would be the day. The day that she would remember being inducted as Lucy Hartfilia of Fairy Tale. Never mind the fact that her stay at the expensive hotel practically starved her of jewels and that she couldn't afford to stay at an inn, much less a budget one. Then there was the fact that she bought even more clothes to help her calm down. After all she needed to do was walk in and get accepted into Fairy Tale to make jewels. So she was forced to go there, she had to join, now or never. So this is where Lucy had found herself, swallowing a nervous lump and ignoring the fast beating of her heart underneath her bust from just being outside the door of Fairy Tale. The gate that led inside the hall looked gigantic, intimidating, menacing even. Planting a shaky hand on the handle, she pulled, only to realize that it was a push door. Such was the intensity of her nervousness. She didn't know anyone here. Why was she here? They would never accept her. With the reminder of her malnourished wallet, Lucy would never stoop to the level of sleeping outside on the concrete ground or dirt like a hobo. Okay, she just needed to take a deep breath. Ah. There it was, all that confidence came soaring back and she didn't even need anything more than that. So with an excited smile, Lucy finally pushed the door. Immediately she greeted with a glass shattering beside her, nearly missing her pretty face. Her eyes widened at the intensity of the sounds within and at the sight before her. A full-out brawl was occurring, people were screaming, laughing, and great crashes, and flames, and ice, and other magical spells being thrown. What was going on? A coup? This wasn't Fairy Tale, no way, it couldn't be. It was enough to send her running, as far away as she could. Screaming perhaps. She had used what little jewels she had left to feed herself and to buy a ticket to Onibus. Guess she really had to join Naruto's guild then, Fire Shadow. It sounded alright, at least she would be given some words of recommendation from Naruto. She knew him a little, it was better than nothing at all. She walked the streets of Onibus, looking for Naruto's little guild. The town was smaller than Magnolia, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find. She bought some water at a little stand and asked the owner of the location of the Fire Shadow Guild. Fire Shadow? He replied. Onibus has a magic guild. That's what I was told. No idea where this guild might be, young lady. And so she continued to ask several more people that she passed by on the streets. No magical guild here. What? There's one here? How come I never knew about this? Hours later and she still found no hint of this place. She was seriously contemplating that Naruto was lying his ass off that his guild was actually here. God, if she ever found him he'd better make her some food to make up for that. Oh yeah, I think I remember hearing about Fire Shadow. What? Where? Lucy said. She almost grabbed the man by the hem of his shirt. I wouldn't know, but the mayor should know the location. The man said fearfully as he gazed into the ravenous depths of her eyes. She wanted to cry, how come she didn't think of that? It had been hours since she had tried finding the elusive guild and she was tired of carrying around all her luggage. She walked the streets of Onibus, trying to ignore the loud and incessant grumblings of her stomach. Lucy could not describe herself other than grouchy, upset, angry, no. Too many words that meant the same. Depressed was also another thing that she felt. Wow, was she a failure? She couldn't summon the courage to even ask to join Fairy Tale. Entering the mayor's office that was inside some official building, a secretary stood behind a desk. She put up a finger, signifying that she would have to wait for a moment. Presently, she had no patience to make an appointment for only one question. She entered through the door for the mayor, while a panicking secretary tried to stop her. For the love of everything, just tell me where the Fire Shadow Guild is, she shouted at the mayor, who seemed to be in a meeting with another individual. Her exhaustion kept her from being embarrassed. I'm sorry Mr. Tama, but she just barged. It's alright, I wasn't too busy, the mayor replied, as he put up his hand. He scratched his head in puzzlement. Fire Shadow, why does the name seem familiar? Excuse me for a moment. The dark and ominous mood filled over Lucy. Even the mayor of the town didn't even know where or what Fire Shadow was. Of course, that's the magical guild that started recently. He opened up a few drawers on his desk while the man he was meeting awkwardly sat around. Here it is, he exclaimed as he grabbed a few files. He grabbed a small piece of paper and wrote what was hopefully an address. Mayor Thomas stood up and walked to her before he got really serious. Now leave and never come in here again without an appointment, he said in a sudden threatening whisper. Yes sir, Lucy stuttered as she tried to keep the disturbing wide eyes out of her mind. Good, I hope you'll be accepted. Is this seriously where it was? It was some stories tall apartment complex. The other thing was that there was no sign of anything signifying that the guild Fire Shadow stayed here. It actually looked nice, like a place where she could find herself staying. The address had stated that the room number was 004 in the basement. Ah, so Fire Shadow only rented a space for it rather than a full guild hall. Naruto did mention it was a small guild. She went down the stairs and was surprised that there were only 4 doors down a long hallway. That was when she saw an emblem of the fire that Naruto had on his hand, the guild that Naruto was a part of. This she could handle, a regular door and not some grand-looking arch gate to heaven and all the other holy stuff. There was also someone here that she was acquainted with. On the door there seemed to be a list, only 3 names were inscribed: Naruto, Shikamaru, Shizune. It was smaller than she thought, it really was a new guild. She gave a breath of relief, at least she wouldn't be the only girl around. She gave a few knocks and waited. A new life was about to start for her. When the door swung open she almost half expected another side of a brawl. She was losing it. Instead it was Naruto. Who blinked once, then twice at her. He was wearing a short sleeve. Lulu? He already forgot her name. No wait Lucy. She nodded, giving a relieved sigh. Hi Naruto God this still wasn't quite as easy as she thought it would be. Can I join the Fire Shadow Guild? The young woman was then stared at like she was something foreign, an alien. No, as the door was closed on her. The blonde was not expecting such a reception. She could only bow her head and rested on the door before letting herself crumple to the ground on her knees. Please Naruto. I have nowhere else to go. Fairy Tail didn't accept me, there were a lot of applicants and I was too weak to join, she said dejectedly. Her pride and self-pity couldn't allow her to tell the truth to Naruto. The door swung open once again, revealing the blonde with the one arm and whiskered cheeks. You want to join? What the hell? Didn't you find me the least bit creepy? No, not really. I was the one who kept bothering you anyway. Naruto blinked. Yeah you're right, you were the creepy one. What? Lucy, seriously? We're not even a well-known guild, hell most of this town doesn't even know this guild exists. I mean even to me that sounds suspicious. I noticed. Was her only reply. Wow, rude, he replied as he closed the door to her face. I'm sorry, it just took all day to find this guild, she replied. Naruto opened the door once more. So can I join? He looked at her for a long moment before finally asking a simple question. Why? Well, I got way too carried away on my jewels and I need to start somewhere, as a mage. Besides, you're the only other person I know out here, sort of. So, you have no friends other than your summons. Yeah, she confessed. Damn, did she really just admit that? So can I join? It felt like an eternity had passed before his eyes widened and then looked contemplative. Wow, well, I guess I don't have a good enough reason to say no, and besides you look pretty damn pathetic. Wait, are you the master of the guild? She asked with a bit of curiosity, ignoring his insult. Seeing as I'm the only one in the guild, yeah I am. You want to take back your application now? What? What about these people on this sheet right here? Pointing at the door between them, he leaned on said door, another contemplative gesture sparked on his face. To start a guild, you need a few willing members to make it official. These people don't actually exist here. He explained. How'd you do that? I have my ways, he replied cryptically. Well, now that was a bit sketchy. You'll see soon enough. So, you and I will actually be the only members of Fire Shadow. Yeah, that is if you even still want to join. It wasn't like she had a choice in the matter, but it could be worse. Yeah. His eyes widened. That's weird, but whatever, I mean take your shoes off when you get in. Naruto Uzumaki stepped aside and walked towards the kitchen while she settled her luggage inside and closed the door. She smelled ramen. It made her stomach growl once again as she took off her knee-high boots. Are you hungry? He asked, likely a coincidence or he had impressive hearing, but more likely that he was just being nice. Yes please, Lucy said. She gazed around the apartment, it was sizable, and the living room had the usual, a movie lacrima, television, couch, and other necessities. Several mats covered the floor where the couch was. Various other objects were also littered around the room, like the poncho she saw him wearing a few days ago. The only thing I have is ramen, although I have different flavors. Ah, as long as it isn't spicy, she replied as she walked to the chair by the table. In another minute or so, the smell of hot ramen filled the air and Naruto dexterously planted 2 bowls on the table with his hand. Somehow without spilling it, it was pretty impressive. Naruto gave a brief thanks for food, which she did the same as well. She focused on the first several bites before she couldn't hold in the question she had. So when do I get that tattoo that shows that I joined Fire Shadow? Huh? You know, that orange leaf tattoo on your hand. She explained. Oh right, as he inspected his hand. Oh crap, that reminds me that I actually have to put in some paperwork about you joining. He mumbled some other incoherent babble as stood up with an empty bowl and placed it into the sink. How did he finish that so fast? She asked herself as he wandered off to the other rooms. She hadn't even seen him eat more than a few mouthfuls, she hadn't even seen him drink the broth. It was empty, what kind of magic was that? Still, Lucy couldn't deny that she was excited about working as a fully fledged legal mage of Fire Shadow. Her mood lifted slightly because of it and from her stomach being filled. Sure, she might be the only other person a part of it other than Naruto, but maybe she still had to get into the groove of things and get familiar with one another. Naruto returned, in his hand he held a magic stamp tool. Alright, finally found it. Can I have it in the color pink? She asked in excitement, so many realms of possibilities had opened up to her, jewels, and more clothing, and living on her own, and perhaps more friends. Sorry, but the only color that I managed to get was the glorious color orange. No other ones. No, I forgot the instructions on how to do it, I have a really hard time doing this, Naruto looked at her. It's either that or get out of here. Orange is a great color. He laughed. Oh, so he wasn't serious. You know what, now that I remember I think I got the color blue one time before. Although it might end up being a shit color, maybe literally, Naruto suggested. He scratched his chin as he tried to figure out the contraption he held. Blue is a better one though. She finished with her bowl of ramen by the time he let out a satisfied sound. This time the area under the stamp was blue, but she actually didn't mind the color orange, she had several gorgeous garments in it after all. Where did you want it? He asked. Oh no, she had all it planned out, how could she have forgotten? Her hand. Her shoulder. Thigh. Chest. Stomach. She felt a pressure on her left hand, where Naruto had proceeded to stamp the fire shadow symbol on her left hand. Lucy gasped in horror. Her special moment was ruined. What? I thought I heard you say hand, so I just chose the one closest to me. Oh, did I ruin something? He asked. Yes. She replied meekly. Was his brilliant reply. I hate you. I see, so you have a place to stay, right? No, well, you're a part of this guild now. So I guess you can say that this place belongs to you too, there's some empty rooms in the hall. Hey Lucy, you wanna know something? You're the second most powerful mage in the guild right now, he laughed heartily at his own joke as they sat on the couch together and watched a movie. Are we going to do anything, like make some jewels? She asked. Amused, but ultimately ignoring his terrible joke. Lucy had been here for 2 days, waiting for him to show her the ropes. Nothing had been done yesterday, and it looked like it was going the same path today. She didn't even know where the job board was. She had taken up his offer to stay until she saved up some jewels to find her own place. Me? Nah, you can do whatever you want, Naruto replied. She looked at him from his words, and he seemed confused. I kinda thought you were just relaxing or something. But, I don't know how to do anything, nor do I have any jewels. You could figure it out, I did the same thing, oh, and that board is at the town hall. Lucy pouted, she was bored, and not to mention broke. So she couldn't do any of the fun stuff like shopping or massages or tanning. What if I got hurt? I don't even know how to get assignments or missions. Besides, I have no jewels to get anywhere. He looked at her, then at the clock, and then let out a sigh. Alright, I have to go to a meeting today though, it's the only reason I haven't done anything. So if you want to come I wouldn't mind. I'll even pay. It was something to do, and that got her excited. So she accepted. It was how once again she found herself sitting across from a very stone-faced Naruto as he rode on the train again. Once again, the metal frame that he held onto bent from his grip. She tried to replicate it, only to meet failure. He must be physically strong to do something. He thankfully went without the ugly poncho this time, settling into a white overcoat over his black coat. His coat concealed his right arm, so anyone who didn't know him would be aware that he possessed none. So why do you wear that poncho? That? I wear it when I'm gone for more than a week, I use it to sleep outside and save more jewels that way. You'll never convince me to sleep outside, she mumbled. He shrugged, she wasn't sure if he was paying attention or didn't hear her. Lucy, what were your plans when you joined a guild? Naruto asked, looking intently with his azure eyes. They were nice to look at. I just wanted to live on my own, you know. And meet people I guess, what about you? When did you start Fire Shadow? She responded as looked at her left hand, a blue symbol of a leaf. It looked nice, she found herself staring at it several times since she got it. I travel a lot and I wanted to make some jewels at the same time to buy things. As for the guild, he hummed as he scratched his head and contemplated about the same time when I came here, a month ago. I only made one because it's easier to make money without having to worry about being scammed or things like that. She didn't know that those were things that independent guilds had to worry about. Luckily she was in a legal one, it reminded her of how good a mood she was in. How old are you? She asked, flipping her hair, and smiled. I'm 17 years old, I'm just a young woman who longs for the experiences of the world. Okay, sure, Naruto initially looked at her like she was crazy before her infection settled on him. I'm 19, and I'm probably the greatest person you'll ever meet. He flashed a wide grin, his eyes flashed in a mischievous way, and suddenly an entire different image appeared than what he portrayed. A very cocky kind of guy, it was much too sincere to be anything else. She voiced, interested in the sudden image he gave, especially the eyes. What? He asked. Nothing, never mind. He sat down at the table where many of the guild masters sat around, there were plenty, and too many names that he couldn't remember. Really, he only remembered 2 names since he'd been here. Makarov was someone that he only remembered today, mostly because of Lucy and how much she liked fairy tale. She had told him not to bring up her failed initiation into his guild because he wasn't directly involved with the process. Still, it must have sucked to have been turned away, much like how he failed the academy test twice to become a ninja. So he decided to respect her wishes. Makarov was short and he really meant an incredibly short balding old man. Probably only reached to his knee or something. Then there was Bob, and Naruto felt an involuntary shiver run up his spine, and he only remembered his name because of how much the guy scared the crap out of him. That guy was dressed in some pink dress and had small little wings that flew some inches off the ground. It was mostly the way he spoke that unnerved him. He could handle the dress, but his attitude was just a bit too uncomfortable for him. Lucy was somewhere inside the building. Speaking of her, he didn't know what to make of Lucy, his newest and only member so far. He never intended on her joining his guild, but it wouldn't be long. He would have to get another guild for her to join, and he would begin that plan today. During that time, he might as well let Lucy obtain some experience during that process. As for the guild meetings, it was fairly casual. Plenty of drinks were passed around, but he never stayed here long. Talk, update, and give current reports. All the other times he had simply given his report, no change, none or minimal damages. He didn't do any S-rank assignments, at least formally. He saw the magazines, something about the interviews with S-class mages, including that S-class mages were usually kept on a close eye by their council. It made sense, after this was still a nation, and mages were their own force. If not a bit independent. It was his turn to speak now, as the other one beside him halted his talks. Actually, I've got a few updates, he said, others peeked at the new occasion. Shikamaru Nara retired from mage life, saying that he wasn't his thing, and he rather did nothing, literally. A bit more details in the report. Also, I've accepted a new member in Fire Shadow, Lucy. Only 2 days ago actually, I got her application here, so I don't have a whole lot to say about her. Other than that, no damages, yada yada yada. Whatever. Oh, Naruto, you have such a handsome voice I've almost forgotten. The disturbing speaker could only belong to one such person. Bob. He felt horrendous shivers run up his spine just from the sound. Almost like nails on a chalkboard, except it reached into your soul. Hey Bob, have I ever told you to kinda freak me out? He replied, hoping that came off as a joke when it really didn't. Bob seemed like a good man, and that was all he was willing to find out. That was mean, but you know what they say about bad boys. Bob said. No he didn't, nor did he ever want to find out. He held nothing against Bob, as long as he stopped trying to talk like this to him all the time. Thankfully, he was silenced, as the person next had begun talking. Bob also walked out to do whatever he did. Yet, it reminded him that he had wanted to speak to several of them. Makarov was one, Bob, well damn it, he guessed he had to speak to Bob at one point. As well as the guildmaster of Lamia Scale. Guessed that was enough, some of the other ones looked a bit too shady for Lucy. Lucy was somewhere in the room and likely socializing with other people. Guildmasters could invite 2 of their own for an escort. However, Makarov was alone for whatever reason. Excuse me, but I must drain the main vein, hahaha. Makarov suddenly said, standing on the chair that didn't make him any taller than Naruto, and jumped off of it. Naruto briefly wondered if Makarov was done, like what he'd done last month. He wasn't the only one who did the bare minimum and then ditch. Although he didn't know if Makarov did such a thing. Naruto stayed for several minutes before coming aware that he could actually speak to him and skip some of this meeting for a bit. If it could be called that, the Magic Council was the one who wanted the reports. This was mostly just socializing. He took off his hood so that he actually looked a bit more approachable. Looking for the washrooms, he idly thought if anyone in the guild thought he was suspicious. He had lived here for nearly 3 years. Traveling through Earthland and its nations, Fiori was his latest stop. His investigation brought him to the washrooms, but they were empty. He decided to sense for him, he was outside with a few other individuals. He heard a few other commotions from upstairs and in the other room. He pushed the door outside and walked a bit to the side towards a small hush of voices, and he noticed Bob talking somewhere hidden in the bushes for something he didn't wish to know. His senses found Makarov on the side of the building speaking to someone that looked eerily like Shikamaru, but there were some differences. Like the sharper features and a whole lot less laziness. He was sweating, his clothing tattered, and looked exhausted. Shikamaru wouldn't push himself that far unless he had to. Yo, old man, who's this? One of your, someone from your guild, he asked. Noticing the fat crossdresser in the corner of his eyes, hidden behind the bushes. Along with some other people he didn't know. Oh, was there some danger that he didn't know? How come he wasn't told of this? The Shikamaru's almost doppelganger had a creepy flute to his lips with a sinister aura, a magical artifact. He could feel the negative emotion seething off of it, interesting. Naruto right. I was just telling this one about the importance of family, Makarov replied. He was a lot more serious than what he had seen before. He wants to play a tune for me. Would you like to join me, young Naruto? Sure, he replied. Makarov looked to be in control of whatever situation he was in. Naruto stood near him, and their guest looked even more shaken. I don't know much about Naruto here, but he is young, yes. Shikamaru's body double nodded before Makarov continued. Despite that, Naruto here is a guild master, one at such a young age too. I have many young people that are similar in age. Again, I don't know much about him, but I have no doubt he is a strong one. I think he's one that persevered through hard strife to reach where he is. He felt the weight of the transfer of eyes on him, the center of attention. It was one that he always sought after in his childhood, to be acknowledged that he existed, that he was worth something, anything at all. Now, in contrast to that childhood, it was unwanted. Makarov seemed to have wanted him to contribute, so he had to say something at the very least. Yeah, it was difficult, but now I'm here. He couldn't help but frown. His vague answer didn't deter Makarov slightly. They say you can catch a glimpse into a person, but how little they say about their hardships. Can you tell me, Naruto, would you be here now if not for your friends? I would have never gotten even close to where I am without them, he replied truthfully. Naruto looked at the short old man, some swirling thoughts within him, and was reminded of the old man. Hokage Makarov seemed very satisfied with his answer as he continued to speak. You see, Naruto found his strength naturally because of his friends, his family. I believe if you have belief in yourself and strive for them, you'll be able to smile and live strong. Without having to depend on such a flute, of course. The wide, almost sinister-looking grin grew on Makarov's face. One that the similar-looking Shikamaru responded with a terrified and odd expression. His knees buckled and he fell to the ground like he was praying. I surrender. He breathed out. Well, this was kinda anticlimactic without some context. Bob decided to reveal himself this time, along with several individuals, 2 young men and a woman. Wow, that girl had really pretty hair, it was a nice shade of red. There was also a little flying blue cat and all of them looked a little worse for wear. The other guildmaster kneeled beside the guy on the ground. I don't know what's going on, but you're cute. He recoiled at the comment. At least it made him feel better that he wasn't the only one who had a similar reaction to Bob. Naruto decided this would be a time he could talk to Bob. He would feel safer from Bob if others were around him. Hey, Bo. A sinister laugh distracted him and Naruto thought he found the source. You mages have no guts. Naruto blinked. Am I going crazy or did that flute just fucking talk? It did, the blue little cat said. Ah. It screamed as it flew around the pink-haired guy. So it can talk too. The skull flute decided to speak once more, no wonder it carried negative emotions. I can't hold it in anymore, I'm just going to feast upon all of you. Smoke bellowed up from within the flute, an explosive force erupted from it, sending loose dirt and sand into the air. Disrupting vision for a moment before it cleared. Wow, he's big, he commented. Naruto looked at the large demonic-looking thing that towered over the building and only grew larger with every passing moment. It's a demon. Some of the people beside him shouted, as well as some girlish screams. Despite the only woman with red hair looking warily at this growing thing and not at all letting those sounds out. Well, he wouldn't be surprised if one came from Bob. Looking back at this growing monstrosity with the wooden limbs, Naruto felt something almost gleeful stirring inside him. It was making him excited. A fight, was this thing powerful? He remembered that Shukaku was sealed inside an urn or something like that, and this was very similar. Was there a thing like tailed beasts in this land? Perhaps he was itching to do something, anything at all. I'll eat all your souls. Hahaha. The large being, who looked very much like a demented tree of some sort. It was actually a little intimidating, but he had faced much worse. Souls can be eaten, Hugray, are they good? Tell me, the pink-haired one asked the other guy with him. Grabbing a hold of him and shaking him like his life depended on it. How would I know, Natsu? Gray retorted, punching him in the face to get him off. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. Well, Bob talked about the dark mage Zeref from ancient times. Zeref, that was something familiar. He came across a couple of artifacts that had belonged to this guy. Although this was the first that turned into a demon like this. This one person that he had fought talked about it too, something about reviving him. Hey old man Makarov, let me handle this alright. Naruto suggested. An idea sprung into his mind, any less power would be worthless if his experience told him. Although another doubt filled his mind, he casted that away. Lifting his palm for a familiar sight, his favorite technique, the Rasengan. He quickly channeled wind chakra into it as the beast talked. More fighting and less talking, damn it. Yet, when was the last time he used something like this? Yes, about 2 months ago when he destroyed some magical tower. It gave a nostalgic feeling. Despite the fact that he didn't have to say the technique, he couldn't help but whisper it to remind himself. Wind style. Rasen Shuriken. The perfected technique sprang to life in a whirring sound. He quickly threw it without much delay and, as he felt the power leave his palm that sailed like a bolt of lightning towards this demon thing. Naruto's doubts were realized and was immensely disappointed when it cut into the body of the tree-looking creature like butter before the explosion sounded and destroyed any trace of its upper body. The whiskered blonde noticed as the others beside him braced themselves for the concussive blast as he channeled chakra to his feet. The wind and dirt flew past them, several others beside him were forced back a few steps. Someone actually fell to the ground. Damn, he felt cool as hell, standing still with the wind forcing his cloak back, maybe hitting some less cool person. With it over, the entire upper portion of the beast had been obliterated. There, the only remaining part was the legs, a pair that started to teeter towards. Fuck. He swore. He couldn't look away as it fell on their meeting place, loud crashes and thuds and concrete and brick and glass broke. So much for looking badass. Naruto looked back at Makarov and Bob while the others had looks of shock on their faces. He rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. Oops. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time, till then sayonara.